You talk about something called the inner ring problem. What is that?
Yeah, it's an idea that I learned from C.S. Lewis, a very famous 20th century English writer. And he wrote about this idea, observing what he saw in his generation in the UK. And that is that there were a seemingly infinite number of inner rings that people wanted to get into. And whenever someone got into an inner ring, they discovered that indeed the new inner ring they were in was actually not a good enough inner ring for them. And they wanted to be part of another inner ring. And I kind of alluded to that about my filmmaking. Like at some point, I wanted to be a filmmaker and then a documentary filmmaker. And then I want to be a documentary filmmaker who was funded by a certain number of well regarded funders that funded good work. Then I wanted to be a PBS filmmaker and then a PBS filmmaker that got into these top festivals and that won awards and were invited around the world. And then I wanted to be win certain awards, and eventually, I won an Academy Award at one point. Notice that it was an infinite journey. I actually have a number of friends who have Academy Awards, and I know that even then, there's this aspiration to be in inner rings past that, because as one filmmaker put it, people might think that first Academy Award was just an accident, and there's a need to win a second to prove it wasn't an accident. And so, Lewis hypothesized that this journey to get in the inner ring then becomes an infinite one, because there's never an inner ring that we get to and we think, aha, now it's over. We've ended. And anybody who understands a little bit how infinity works, any distance on an infinite journey is an infinite fraction of that journey. So the feeling is you've gotten nowhere. He calls this the trap of the inner ring, that we keep wanting to be in a ring, except once we get in a ring, we want to get another one, right? That's a trap because we can't get out of it. And he says that there's a way to escape that. And his prescription was and is to find something we like to do and to do it often, and to invite people who like to do that thing as well to do it with us. And he says if we keep doing the thing we like to do and invite people who like to do it with us, then eventually the relationships we form with those people doing that thing will look like an inner ring to people on the outside, but we know it's not an inner ring. It's just a gathering of people who like to do this thing. And that special relationship that we form with the people that we do this thing together is called friendship. So he says that friendship is the antidote to the trap of the inner ring. I'm old enough and I've been around long enough that I've been invited into many, many inner rings, and I've aspired to and worked to get into many, many inner rings, including thought leadership author inner rings. And I've found that Lewis was 100% right, to the point now where I have an explicit rule in my life that I don't pursue inner rings just for the sake of getting into an inner ring. If I want to be a better ski instructor, there's a ring of more experienced ski instructors, and I can do and work to get into that. But I don't want to get to the inner ring just because it's better in a ring. I want to work toward that inner ring because I want to build my skills. So it's kind of funny, Seth. I'm at this place where I can recognize when people are inviting me to inner rings and like dangling them in front of me, like I want to be part of it because they're really powerful, influential people there. And they don't know that as they're speaking, I'm actually thinking in my mind, oh, that's another inner ring. I don't pursue inner rings for inner rings, so I totally don't want to be part of that.
Rolling this over in my head, and I'm trying to think, is this really a problem? Because does this motivate people to get better or to, move forward and progress? But at the same time, I can understand why, if it's infinite, it just gets exhausting after a while. I mean, how do you tell the difference between whether this is something that is motivating you versus damaging to you?
I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves is this helping me grow into who I want to be? I'm with some frequency invited to conferences or gatherings or retreats where someone says in so many words, hey, there's going to be really important people there that you want to know. Here's the truth, Seth. I'm over 50 years old now. I've been to a lot of places. I know a lot of people. In fact, I know so many people, I can't maintain all the relationships I have at the level I want to maintain them. I just physically don't have the time. I don't need access to more people to just have more relationships. That's not to say I don't want to meet people. That's not to say there are people I'm not going to meet that are going to enrich my lives, but I just don't physically need to go and find more people, which is to say, I just don't need to go find more inner rings for the sake of inner rings. There may be people I want to find because they can help me mature in the ways I want to mature, and I can work toward that and I can foster that. But that's a very different thing than trying to get in a ring to tell myself that I'm good enough or I'm cool enough or that other people respect me enough.
So I actually learned a new vocabulary word reading this chapter, one that I didn't know before, which is diaconate. Explain to me what that is.
Mm-hmm. So diaconate is a term that I took from religious studies, that's often used in spiritual denominations to refer to the people within the spiritual tradition that have more authority than other people. And even within diaconate, there's higher levels and lower levels. And I applied that to community building to denote that it's important that there are people in the community that have more authority on what are the values of the community and how the community works than other people. And I know that some people, when they're bringing people together, like to have an extremist egalitarian approach. The problem with that is that if someone stands up and starts broadcasting really abhorrent ideas, really racist ideas or hateful ideas, if there's nobody in the room or any in the organization to say that is actually not consistent with the values of this community, be it a sporting community or an education community or a military family community, there's no way to distinguish for members or a visitor that that is not a representative voice or representative ideas. And typically the diaconate is there. It's just that people either don't, if they don't think it's there, it's because they don't recognize it or understand it's important to have one. When there is nobody who has particular authority on what are our values and how do we do things, I'll ask, who has the authority to bring someone into the community? Who has authority to bring someone out? And who has the authority to say, no, that's not how we do things here? And usually there's somebody, and it may be an informal authority, but that there is authority there to help steer how the community is growing.